All right. Welcome to the Fold Mysteries, where we seek to discover everything that lies between the folds of reality. So, joining with us again is Abe, and he brought a friend. So, most of you guys remember. Abe, take it over.
Hey, everybody, yes. I'm 60 miles or so from the Canadian border up in northern Minnesota. And for those who have tuned in, I think we had Pops on in February. So I can remember Pops here broadcasting to you live from Stinky Bar, aka MNGRT, Northern AQ. So we have Pop coming in joining us and here with us tonight, you guys. So that's going to be yeah.
Welcome, Pop. So, for those that couldn't understand Abe,
Oh, no.
he he's welcoming Pops to the show. But I'm sure everything he had to say was wonderful.
Uh, yeah, I don't know what it is. Like I said, we're about 60 miles from Canada. And we had Pops on earlier, I think it was back in February. And we're broadcasting live. Can you hear me better?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, broadcasting live from Stinky Bar, also known as MNGRT Northern HQ. So we're at headquarters. We've got a team meeting going on this coming weekend. And I just decided to come up a couple days early.
All right. Awesome. Well, we're glad to have you joining us, Pops.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you. Maybe it's
You're
the funny part about it is you're on the same computer.
Yeah, the microphone's probably over on that side there.
Well, maybe it's just your boisterous voice. Maybe it's that bassy, boisterous voice.
Oh.
um, so, hey, Abe, anything new with you? I mean, as far as conference or anything cool you got going on?
Yeah, absolutely. Friday, April 24th, we not only announced one speaker, but last week we also announced our very first conference speaker, which is from Animal Planet's hit TV show, Finding Bigfoot. Renee is going to be our first speaker for this year's Minnesota Bigfoot Conference.
Nice.
However, yeah, Renee is coming. We also, because everybody was just so patient, we decided to release another speaker last Friday. And this gentleman, he's an author. He's been in a couple of documentaries. He's from the West Coast. His father actually it happens every time. His father is the one that recorded the very famous Freeman footage.
Nice.
And I am talking about Michael Freeman is coming to the Minnesota Bigfoot Conference this year as well. And you can see a couple of the Freeman casts and stuff like that he's displaying. As I mentioned, he also authored the book, The Freeman Bigfoot Files. And this is amazing. Seriously, this is a book you want to have in your library. It's full of pictures, documentation of his father's stuff. So we're extremely happy to have both of those speakers coming so far. And for more information, again, as of last week, follow the Minnesota Bigfoot Conference on the Facebook page and click like, follow, do all the dibbly dings, and just for all the updates and that. However, we also have a bonus for everybody. So, somebody I really admire, and I work with Lispo once a week, is going to be our special co-host MC for the Minnesota Bigfoot Conference. And she is an amazing, bright woman, very intelligent. She's got a lot on her plate, like so big, it's still piled so high, and she's killing it in life as well. And for those who don't know who I'm talking about, ladies and gentlemen, your host of the Fold Mysteries, Gwendolyn Guthrie, is going to be our co-MC for this year's Minnesota Bigfoot Conference. Yay!
I'm so excited.
Look at her cheeks.
I'm
Yeah.
so excited.
So she's coming to Minnesota in October, and this is going to be the first week in October for the Minnesota Bigfoot Conference. It's being held at the Timberlake Lodge and Hotel in Grand Rapids, Minnesota. But part of that, we're going to have her come out here and get her feet wet in some of the northern woods as well. Take her out and, you know, I mean, I don't need to show her how squatchy Minnesota is. Heck, she's had her own Bigfoot stuff happen to her. She knows that they're not only in Ohio, but they're also here in the land of 10,000 lakes, too. So, very excited for that. And I'm stoked and, Pop howling at the moon. He's so excited.
I'm so excited. I'm beaming. I cannot wait. I was really hoping I'd have the opportunity to go, but now I actually do get to go. So I'm stoked, and I appreciate you very much, Abe, for all your kind words and for inviting me to come along and be a part of it. So thank you so much for
that.
Yay! But I have news as far as my conference, the Iron to Michigan Bigfoot Conference, August 15th and 16th. Spots are filling up. Vendor spots are filling up. Make sure to grab your tickets and your vendor spots soon. It's just right around the corner. It's going to be here before everybody knows it. So, every style and type of vendor is welcome. It's not just Bigfoot oriented vendor tables. It's going to be a variety of this and that. Whoever wants a table is more than welcome to come, and whoever wants to buy a ticket will be happy to be there, or be happy to have you there. And always just remember, it's a family event, so we do not welcome alcohol or open containers or anything like that. So it is a fun, family-friendly event. So get your tickets, scan the QR code.
Just do it. Yes. It's going to be action-packed.
Yes. So we have an awesome guest tonight. So anybody who read the short little description of the show knows that we have an awesome guest tonight. So let me welcome to the stage Karl Sup. It's not adding him. There we go.
So, I always say his name backwards.
Welcome, Karl. So you are a multi-experiencer, and so you are a seasoned software consultant. Well, glad to have you. So you are a seasoned software consultant, architect, developer, and analyst with a profound dedication to cryptozoology and paranormal research, an avid Bigfoot investigator. You have had 13 documented sightings in Arizona, Missouri, Illinois, Georgia, and countless encounters in Maryland, Wisconsin, Illinois, and many other states, conducting extensive field work in diverse regions, including Long Island, New York, and the suburbs of Chicago. With decades of audio analysis expertise, he has collaborated with MK Davis to enhance VHS tape recordings from the cell site, uncovering evidence of infrasound potentially linked to Bigfoot communication. Karl archives and maintains significant digital and physical collections from researchers like Bobby Short and Mike and Sandy Sells, preserving valuable cryptozoological data. Your bio goes on and on, but your research is documented on ghosthuntingtheories.com.
It is.
Which features detailed Bigfoot reports, a psychometry reading of Sasquatch-handled deer skull, and 11-inch Long Island Bigfoot accounts. His work, blending rigorous scientific analysis and speculative methods, bridges cryptozoology, paranormal investigation, and ufology, making him a prominent figure in the study of the unexpected. So you are like if I could roll everything I love into one guest, you are it. Like that.
Awesome. I'm like a Swiss Army knife of paranormal.
I love it. I don't do a lot of the ufology. I've tried to get into that, and I've had some creepy experiences, so it kind of pushed me away from it because it got too personal. But yeah, I do paranormal research and Bigfoot research, and I'd love to get into a wider variety of cryptids. I've done some things like the Mothman and other stuff like that, but I find it fascinating. So, I mean, welcome to the show, Karl.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there was one cryptid that I certainly absolutely did not expect, which was, you know, I was doing research in the Alton, Illinois area, which is, of course, like haunted central. But I did a little haunting, expeditions there, if you would. But I you know I there was the legend of the Piasaw,
Oh,
which was a large carnivorous bird-like creature that was actually painted as a mural on a bluff along the Mississippi River that Pierre Marquette saw in 1673. And I was very interested in it because my cousin's um, ancestor actually was John Russell, who had written down the first account, or at least the legend of the Pyrosaw,
oh
and
wow.
uh, and that. So I went to go look at that and stuff. And as I talked to more people in Alton, I started getting actual eyewitnesses, going back at least to 2013, that actually claimed they saw a Piasaw. And there was one that was very compelling because it was, you know, a husband and wife in a car, and I interviewed both of them separately, and it was interesting to see that they had a different viewpoint of what they focused on during their sighting of this Piasaw, which um, really surprised me, especially since I was really going out in the woods there to look for Sasquatch, right, which was kind of like my major focus. But
Right. Yeah. Wow. That's fascinating. So, I know you've done a lot in the Bigfoot community, but I'm kind of curious to hear a little bit more about your paranormal
oh,
research. So,
sure.
kind of start with that. So, I mean, what got you started in the paranormal?
I grew up in a haunted house, and there was a gentleman who was the previous owner who had actually killed himself. But I remember I was probably 4 or 5 years old, and I had this very vivid dream where I was I was walking through the house, although there was different furniture in the house, and I walked into the kitchen. I walked past the kitchen. I could hear some talking in the kitchen area, but I went downstairs into the basement. I reached along this top shelf along the this that was a kind of a built-in shelving unit that was in the basement, and I um, until I felt this like a burlap sack that was tied with a piece of twine, and I took it and I put it down into my robe pocket because I was wearing a robe, and I ended up walking up the stairs. I turned off the light just by reaching up, which, when I was a kid, if I went down in the basement, I had to make sure I walked down 4 steps
Right.
and then jumped up in order to try to reach the string that held, for the light bulb. But in this case, I just reached up and turned it off, and then I walked from the basement doorway over to the kitchen, and I walked into the kitchen, and there was 2 kids sitting at the table, and a woman, and on the stove was a pot of oatmeal that was cooking,
Hmm.
and the 2 kids were eating oatmeal already, and there was an empty bowl right by my thing. Well, the moment that I walked into the kitchen, she jumped up and took my bowl and walked over, and she put oatmeal in my bowl. And I just remember I had my hand in my pocket of the robe, and I was kind of twirling that bag, that burlap sack in my hand, in my pocket. And when she, you know, put the bowl of steaming oatmeal in front of me, I remember looking at the 2 kids and looking at her, and then saying to all of them, "I love you," which of
Oh.
course I'd never seen them before. But I remember the thought in my mind was I was going to put the contents of the burlap sack into my oatmeal.
Oh.
And of course, when I told my parents this dream that I had, they, my dad kind of turned a little gray because he said when they first moved into the house, that was 4 years before I was born, that he found all kinds of small burlap sacks on top of that, along that shelving unit, that actually had rat poison in it.
Wow.
And and the other interesting fact was that in the basement, because it was morning, right? Um, the basement curtains looked like the barber cape that my mom used to cut my hair horribly. By the way, I just want to let you know. Um, and I think you've seen Moe in the Three Stooges. That was probably a good
Yes.
haircut, um, but my mom used this barber cape that she had, and I said, and the funny thing was, is the barber capes were on the draperies on the windows, and then my mom turned kind of gray because here she had actually hated those curtains,
Oh,
and she took them all down and replaced them when they moved in 1959, 4 years before I was born, and she took the material and made it into a barber cape.
no way. That's wild.
Yep. And the,
Wow.
the the house was sold, and my parents bought it because the previous owner had died in the upstairs bedroom. They didn't have any details on it.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow. That's
yep.
amazing.
Yeah. So that's kind of started, and then after that, I actually had an out of body experience, or a near death experience. Really, I had I was probably like 5 or 6, and I actually had I had gotten scarlet fever,
Hmm.
and they I had gone to sleep that night, and I just remember suddenly I was going through, I don't want to say a tunnel, but it was more like uh, a slit. So it was more like configured like that with a bright light at the end of it,
Oh,
and you could see
interesting.
the shadows of just a million people, just the silhouettes of people. But I continued to go towards them until I got to one person, and it was this woman, and she talked to me, and she basically told me that it wasn't my time, that I needed to go back,
Hmm.
and and I went back from that point, and I ended up being feeling heavy again. I remember, just it was interesting, because I was flying basically, and it wasn't until about 3 or 4 years later I was at my grandfather's house, and I was looking through, because my grandmother had died in 1937, and I was looking through some photo albums that he had, and here's a photo of this woman, and I said, I've met her. And my grandfather's like, well, no, she died a long time ago. And I said,
Oh, wow.
no, no, I talked to her. And yeah, it was my grandma Emma that I had talked to. So yeah,
Wow. Wow. That's amazing.
yeah,
Yeah, that would definitely get me into the paranormal as well. Like
yeah,
mine
exactly,
went a little
exactly.
differently, but that would have done it for me as well.
And that's the thing. It's like I had the same feeling, just like I did in getting into Bigfoot, which was, I need to figure out what's going on, or
Mhm.
how is that possible? Even going back to 1987, I was having these vivid dreams, and I had this vivid dream about a plane crash, and it was haunting me. The details, and the plane crashed, and it was right by a freeway, and there was pieces, and I just can remember the smell and seeing it, but I couldn't, when it crashed, I couldn't see any of the insignias on the tail of the airplane or anything. But I could tell later on, I thought back, and I was like, when these started happening to me, it really made me focus on at least airplane design, since I couldn't,
Mm.
since whatever the dreams were showing me were not actual. I couldn't make any details out on it except the configuration of the airplane. So I started really getting into identifying airplanes, and I thought back, and I go, yeah, that really was an MD-80 that I saw in the
Wow.
crash. And of course, this crash was the flight 255 that crashed in Detroit,
Oh,
taking off at
wow.
the airport on August 16th, 1987. This dream I had was 2 weeks prior, and I thought it was just flight anxiety because I was flying for work into Chicago that week, that was coming up, and I thought I was just having some kind of flight anxiety. Well, As it turns out, a good friend of mine was on that flight, and of
Oh,
course it
wow.
crashed right next to the freeway, and all the photos, and it was exactly as I had seen it 2 weeks prior.
Wow.
Um, so, but after that point, every single plane crash that happened between 1987 and 96, when the Sioux City flight crashed in Sioux City, Iowa, and it tumbled, and there was a cornfield, and I just remember smelling the and I woke up, and I remember telling my wife, I was just crying because I could see this like a smoldering doll that was in the wreckage, and and I said, I don't want to see this anymore. And after that point, I never saw another plane crash dream like
Wow.
that. And I still regret it to this day, because
Yeah.
I guarantee you 2 weeks prior to 9/11, I would have seen that crash. And I have to live with that.
That's amazing.
All right.
So
Can I come in? Can you guys hear me okay?
Hey, yeah. Yeah.
I just wanted to jump in because Pops has also had that type of stuff happen to him. Are you aware of the terminology clairvoyant?
I am.
Okay.
I am, and I don't think of myself as that. Certainly, at one point, I feel like I was like much stronger in that area, um, and but it seems to have I've seemed to have gotten away from it, and I don't know. Somehow, I need to recenter myself in order to get focused again.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
definitely, it was. Those have been experiences that I've had, and I just I'll never forget one of the plane crashes. I remember it was a large 747, and it crashed, and it was a wintertime scene, and there was no leaves on the trees, and this plane crashes, but there was no fire. And I just remember thinking, well, that's weird, because all the other crashes had fires. And then there was a flight that was coming up from Columbia that had been circling for a while, and the plane ran out of fuel and crashed on Long Island. I don't know if you remember that one or not, but just remember it was just like, wow. But
Oh,
yeah,
wow. That's amazing. I definitely
yeah,
think that we have the ability to kind of shut things off on ourselves because for a very long time, I feel like I had shut some things off for me. And I think it's a lot easier to shut it off than it is to open it back up again, which is weird.
it is, and all I did is verbally said, I don't want to see this anymore, and
Sorry
it
for showing that.
and it stopped. So, but no, it's been a journey, so in 2008, when I truly got interested. Now, I had experiences in the woods with Sasquatch, but um prior to that, but I didn't really know it, right? I just wrote it off as a anomaly, or, well, that was weird, or something like that, something along those lines. But going all the way back to 1982, I was camping in the woods, and something incredibly loud at 3 a.m. in the morning. I'm in a tent with two buddies of mine, and 3 a.m. in the morning, something howls incredibly loud, and just it. And at that time, there was no such thing as a subwoofer, but it was you could feel it in your chest, and the we jumped out of that tent, pitch black darkness, decided, are we going to jump in the boat and start rowing across this lake in total darkness? um, and we finally convinced ourselves, well, maybe it was just a large coyote or something, and we ended up getting back in the tent, although I think I kept one eye open the rest of the night. But
Right.
um, but fast forward to 2008, I'm sitting on the couch with my son, and we were watching a Messing with Sasquatch commercial, and 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 I laughed my ass off, and he's not laughing, and I said, well, you know, why aren't you laughing? He said, well, it's not real, so it's not that funny. And I said, that's that's ridiculous. I said, how do you know it's not real? Right. So, of course, if I roll all the way back to 1968 when I was a kid in Illinois, my dad had a Argosy magazine subscription, and February of 1968 there was an edition that had um, California's abominable snowman showcased in there, and it had pictures from the Patterson-Gimlin film, and with Roger Patterson, Bob Gimlin. And I remember, I don't know how many times I read that issue. I still have it, actually, but it was one of those things that made me expand my mind. Right? It's like, well, this could be, right. It could be.
Yeah.
And so here I am in 2008, and kind of, I'm telling him about that, and I'm telling him also about what happened in 1982, and he's like, "Come on, Dad, in Arizona? Are you kidding me?" And I said, "Well, I don't know." I said, "Let's Google it, right? I mean, where else do you get info, right?" And
Free start for sure.
yeah, so I Googled Arizona Bigfoot, and the first link was the BFRO .net,
Nice.
and sure enough, I see, oh look, there's some reports from Arizona. So the two of us sat there reading those reports, and then I saw a link to the Ohio Howl, and there you go, Gwendolyn. There was my Ohio experience.
Yes.
And so I played the Ohio Howl, and all the hair stood up on my arm, because that was the second time in my life I'd heard that audio, right?
Right.
And the first was in 1982, and my son saw the hair standing up on my arms, and he goes, "Well, maybe there's something to this." And I said, "Well, look at this. In 3 weeks, there's an expedition in Arizona." I said, why don't I sign us up? Worst case scenario, we'll go out there for 4 days, 3 nights, and we'll hang out with a bunch of crazy people, and we'll get to go camping, right?
Yes.
And I said, but maybe we'll learn something, right? And he goes, "Okay, I'll do it." So I signed us up, and we went up there, and as it turned out, Matt Moneymaker was actually running that expedition, and I remember that on the very first night that I remember that very first night he talked about them being omnivores, and I was like, oh great, my son's going to get eaten, and my wife will never forgive me, right? So
That's funny.
but we get out that first night, and it was in an area that it had a sighting just the week prior, and Matt stayed up on the ridge between these two canyons, and our group, they split into two groups, and one group went to the east, one group went to the west. I was in the group to the west with my son, and here we are standing. We hiked about a quarter mile away from that ridge line to in pitch black darkness, and Matt does a howl, and thank God I have all this recorded as well. But Matt did a howl, and then from the north, you could hear about maybe 3 or 4 seconds after Matt howled, there's a reply, and then to the northwest of maybe 2 or 3 seconds after that first howl reply, another reply, and about 6 or 7 seconds after that to the southwest, there was another reply, but much fainter. You could just barely hear it. But so there was 3 howls that came back, and when that occurred, I thought to myself, I need to figure out what's going on here, just like I did with my paranormal research, right? So
yeah. So you just have a very inquisitive mind, which
yes,
makes for a great researcher, to be honest with you, because I feel like when you limit yourself to specific topics or specific things, you really limit your knowledge base. So I think it's great that you're out there doing like a versatile type of research and coming at everything from all angles. I'm kind of curious. I know that with you being a having multiple encounters, I kind of wonder, do you think that your paranormal experiences and your paranormal connection may play a part in that?
I think it does. Of course, I have no way to prove that, but certainly the way they and initial. Okay, So I'll tell you the story. So I had already had several sightings, actually, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sightings. And then I was helping out on the 2013 BFRO expedition in Arizona, and I'd gotten up to the campsite late, so I pitched my tent pretty much on the outskirts of the campsite. So I was right on the edge of the woods, and we went out. We did calls and howls, and there really wasn't, any interaction with us. And everybody was kind of disappointed. We came back to camp, and I went to bed, and it was probably like maybe 2 a.m. I think, and I climbed into bed, and it was cold that night. It was probably got down to about 25, and this is up on the Mogollon Rim. It's elevation 7,500 to 8,200 feet up on top of the rim there, and I had to improvise because I had an air mattress with a headboard on it, and I kind of propped my head up against it, and then I put a hat on so I could lay a towel across my face so my ears wouldn't be freezing because I kept waking up. Well, it was 3 a.m., 3:30 a.m. I wake up and I realize that my shoulders are off the air mattress, and so I'm bent at the waist, and my shoulders are off the air mattress. Well, I had my head up against the side of the tent wearing this hat, and that's about the time that I realized that there was a hand holding my head through the tent material that
My
had lifted
gosh.
me up off of the tent, off of the air mattress, and as I started waking up and kind of turned a little bit, it let me down very gently, but I remember the hand just completely encased my head. Now I'm 6'5", I'm not a slight guy.
Yeah.
And as it released its grip from my head, you could hear dermal ridges on the nylon of the tent go zip, and then I
Yeah.
could hear bipedal crunching through the forest litter away from my tent. After that point, though, I have to tell you, I've never been or had a rock or a stick thrown at me since 2013.
Wow.
So that's 13 years of getting out in the woods a lot, and
Yeah.
and never having aggressive behavior. I'll put
So
it that way.
has anybody around you that's been out with you had aggressive behavior, but not necessarily directed at you?
No.
Wow.
In fact, they kind of, they just want to I don't want to say interact with our group,
Right.
more or less, right? I can tell you a really humorous story, which is, I'll say, a little PG, but I got up early in the one morning from campsite. I'd taken a friend of mine up there who is very dubious as to my experiences, but I'd been telling him for about 10 years at that point. And I said, when we got up there the very first time, we started unloading everything, and there was a whistle from the woods, and I said, "Oh, that's them." And he's, and I said, "Well, whistle back," So he whistled back, and they whistled back and forth for probably 5 minutes with different things like and then they'd completely mimic him on the way back, and it was this back and forth, and it was really cool. And then he finally went, and they completely stopped, and I said, "Oh, you screwed that up," so
made it too hard.
Yeah, the next morning though, we're after we had gone out done a lot of hiking, and we actually found a couple of very large footprints that really impressed him. But that next morning I got up first, and I come out of the tent, and I walked across camp, and I walked across this old logging road, and I got to the edge of the forest, and of course, first thing in the morning, right? I've got to pee, right? So I get out there, and I'm peeing at the edge of the woods, and when I finished, I let out a loud flatulence. How about that?
There you go.
And from that, and when that happened, from the woods, maybe about 250 feet from me, in deep brush, I hear, and I got to tell you, they have a sense of humor. I hear, ho, 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 ho,
Oh
ho,
my god.
like that, and I turned and I just said, "Oh, did you like that?" And I said in English, and I hear two rock clacks, clack clack, right back, and I just went like this to him, right, so I start walking back to camp, and just about then, my friend's getting out of the tent in the morning. He didn't hear any of this, right? So I tell him the story, and he laughs and he goes, "Where was this?" Well, triangulation wise, it was maybe now about 150 feet away from us, and I said it was right over there, and he goes, "Oh, come on," and I said, so I said, "Hang on a second," and I just turned to the woods and I said, "Could you do that again? Clack those rocks again." And we hear clack clack from the woods, and 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 he goes, "Oh, come on." I go, "Why don't you answer back?" And so he starts looking on the ground for some rocks, and I said, "No, just do a tongue clack back at him. Just go,"
Hmm.
right. So he does that. And they respond right back to him. And once again, just like the day before with the whistles, he goes on and on, just doing different tempos, and they reply back with the exact mimicry, and like I said, this went on until he finally did something like, and and it was all quiet, and I said, "Oh, way to screw that up,"
That's so cool.
but that truly made him a believer, because of course he didn't see them at all, but he did see a large footprint, and then he had this interaction experience, which I think is far more valuable than a lot of physical evidence that we collect as
Oh
research.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, well, it's those experiences that keep us going. It's not the stuff that we collect. It's not it I mean it is the data, but a lot of it is just our own personal experiences and the excitement of it, and getting to go out there and experience what other people have no idea that's out there. So,
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly.
So, I'm kind of curious. So, a lot of what you're talking about sounds like they can understand us. Do you think they can understand us to some degree or very well, or
Oh, very well, actually,
yeah.
because so same friend, we're camping in a different location that I had actually never tried out before. And we go to that location, we camped. As we sat there at the campfire during the night, I could feel eyes upon us from this hillside above, that was near the campsite. And when I went to go, and this was one of the first nights I had decided I was just going to sleep in my Yukon XL. Now it has tinted windows at the back,
Hmm.
so you can see out pretty well, but you really can't see in very well. And I remember just before I went to bed, because other people were saying, "Oh, you know what, they really understand English, right?" So I said, "Okay, I'll try an example here. I'll do a test." And I go to sleep, and I just, it was about 11 p.m., and I just looked up towards that hill and I said, "I would love it if you could come down here and put a handprint on my car." And then I crawled in and I went to bed. So 3 a.m. I stir awake. Don't know why, but I'm wearing a Fitbit, and that Fitbit had a little gap between my arm and the Fitbit. And as I woke up, the green light, a biometric light, whatever, a laser, turns on, and it illuminated the entire cabin of the of the Yukon XL. And and as that green light illuminated everything, not even a foot from my face, right at the window, looking in at me, is this face
Wow.
looking in at me. And as I focused on it, he started backing away into the darkness until it just kind of dissolved into the darkness. So most people probably would scream and
I
scream and grab their gun and do what. And of course, what I did is propped up on an elbow and started looking out the window, right? Trying to look via starlight to see if there was any movement in between some of the trees, some of the shadows of the trees that were nearby. And I didn't see anything. And after a while, I went back to sleep. And 5:15 in the morning, pre-dawn light, I wake up, I open my eyes, and here's this handprint on the window, right where that face had been just a couple hours earlier. And that handprint was 14 inches from the tip of the pinky down to the base of the thumb. And you could see some of the dermal ridges on it. Now, the interesting thing about that handprint was it had gotten below freezing that night outside. So condensation on the inside of the vehicle from me breathing out actually had coated the inside of the window. But the handprint actually was on the outside, but whatever oils were in the hand actually insulated the glass in those areas that actually could show that handprint on the car.
Oh wow! So you brought pictures along with you. That's okay. Perfect. So we're gonna show those now. It's gonna take me. Bear with me and don't pick on me this time for the amount of tabs that I have open because unfortunately I am a tab queen.
I sent a ton of stuff. So
so here's one. So now, you can definitely see the dermal ridges.
Yeah. So this one actually was on my friend's car, just that was parked right near me, and this was on the hood of his car in the dust. So this was a different type of print, but you can see in the middle how the palm actually the bulge in our center of our palm, right? We have that cup in there, and you can actually see that where there's less impression in that area, as well as on the edge. I don't know if you can zoom in or not, but you can see on the edge of the hand, you can see wisps of hair.
Oh yeah, right here.
Yes. Yep. Along the edge there. And that and then if you scroll further down, you'll see the wisps of hair along the wrist area there. You can see the
Oh yeah, down in here.
Yep.
Yeah. Wow. That's very cool.
Yep. And but that was me asking in English, and whether or not they do an instant translate or they understand us completely, that we don't know that, right?
Right. Wow. And then let me see. You have there's a measure of it.
Yeah. So that handprint was 11 inches from the tip of the pinky down to the base of the thumb, and so it was a different individual than the one that left the handprint on my car.
Right. Wow, that's massive.
Yep.
My computer's
11 inches. 11 inches is large enough, but 14 inches is huge.
I think
that's the same print. There we go.
There it is from the inside. Yeah.
So that's the view. That's where the face was just a couple hours prior, but you can see the tip of the pinky all the way up to almost the top of the window, and then the base of where the thumb, the ball of the thumb, down in that lower left side there. Yep. And there's another print. There's another photo that's a little clearer as well.
Yeah. I'm trying to.
No, not that one.
It's acting like it's two different ones. Yeah. Okay. So we got the same one twice, is what it is. And that's.
It should be. Yeah. No.
Let's see. So yeah, we got the same one twice. And we got So we got three different ones here.
Okay. Yep. That's all the same. Yeah. There's one I thought I sent you that had where I actually had taken my hand and put it in the middle, and it was just
wow.
And just in a different lifetime, I actually played two-man sand pro volleyball back before it was an Olympic sport, and I could palm a volleyball easily. So basketball, you had to work at it, but my hand is just dwarfed in that in comparison to that photo. So
wow. That's amazing. Yeah, you can definitely see, especially in that one, that looks like just wisps of hair down towards the bottom.
Yep.
It's very interesting.
Yep. And of course, it has fingers. It's not a bear print, right?
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
I've seen bear prints on hoods of cars, but not nothing like that. But the you know uh, the other interesting thing is that and this may fit into the do they understand English properly or not, but I was doing research in Alton, Illinois area, and I went to one research site that actually um, I'd kind of done my urban research and said this is a good area that they probably are in. But this was 2019 when the Mississippi River had a lot of flooding, and so I go to that area that evening, and this is what I do in the evenings when I'm not working. Right, work has sent me to the location, and I go out and do research, and I do a lot of book work before I step out into the woods. But I get to this area, and it's flooded because of the Mississippi being so high, and I can't get in. I can't drive into this area that I really wanted to get into, and I drove around these woods, and I could not find an access point. So I just parked on the side of the highway, and it was empty out there that night. And um, so I get out of the car, and just about to do. I was going to do a whoop in order to see if I could get a reply, and I said, no, you know what? This is a good time to try an experiment, right? So I stood on the side of the road in total silence. I thought to myself, if you're in these woods, could you please knock? And within 20 seconds, crack, this knock comes out of the woods. And I only thought that. And I was surprised, obviously, shocked actually. And I just thought to myself, thank you. And with that, I hear in my head, and now at this point, I was not a woo type of person at
Yeah.
all. But I hear in my head, I hear go in peace. And I'm stunned, right? So I'm like, well, I'll take that as my hint to exit. And so I waved into the darkness and I went and I got back in my car and I drove to my second location that I had decided that, my second point of interest for the evening. And I get over there and the same thing. It's totally flooded. In fact, even more so than the first location. And so I'm like, well, what do you do in the scientific method, right? You try to
Right.
now this is probably 8 miles away from the first location. It's not like I drove around the block and it's the same individual or something like that. And I go, I pull up there, I park, I do the same thing. I get out, I just stand on the side of the road, and I said, if you're in there, could you please knock? And with that, I start hearing something sloshing through water, and then it sounds like either a very wet stick hitting a tree, but it was close enough that I could actually hear like water droplets come off it, or it was a very wet arm and something slapped a tree very hard, and you could hear the water droplets spraying off of that.
Wow.
But definitely a return knock, right? Based on my thought ask.
Yeah.
And instead of saying thank you, I said, I thought to myself, what are you doing in there? And I hear in my head, catching frogs.
Oh, wow. That's
And
interesting.
that actually stunned me because I was like, I certainly didn't expect that, right?
Right, yeah.
And so then I used what I learned the first time, and I thought to myself, go in peace, right? And I didn't hear any reply back. But anyway, I got back in the car, and I went down to the pub, and I had a pint because I was like,
That's wild. That
my
is
head was,
wild.
my brain was blown. But fast
I was
forward to
gonna
go ahead.
I was gonna touch on a question that we had here because
Sure.
it says, so Mitch Sandman says, does anyone think this is a super intelligence imitating Bigfoot, ghosts, aliens, orbs, and all other high strangeness? Now, I do want to say, now I've talked about it on previous episodes, and King Gerhard and Anne Celine touched on it on a previous episode we had about how there was a potential that we're getting like mixed types of phenomena, because I don't know if you've ever heard of a tulpa. But a tulpa is like a thought being. It's a creation of thoughts, and like maybe something's coming by and hijacking the visage of Bigfoot and kind of mimicking them and giving them a more paranormal-esque type of, you know, look. Like we're seeing a lot more paranormal-esque types of experiences and stuff like that. So I wonder, their theory is that there is a potential that we're getting kind of mixed sort of phenomena. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts on that?
Wow, I'd never considered that. Certainly, I'll keep an open mind on it, and I always tell everybody, keep an open mind on everything, because you never know when you're going to use that data point, as a and be able to reference that as a scientific anomaly, right? I mean, and I know it's a hard stretch for anybody listening to believe, what I just told you, but like I said, I certainly was not. I was a total skeptic on that until I just decided, well, you know what? Tonight's a bust, right? I can't get into the research area I wanted to get into. Let's try something, right? And I'll just, do something that somebody else had told me about once. And wow, my mind was blown open, right? But yeah, certainly, I can't discount any of that, really, and but I will tell you though, at my cousin's farm, the one whose ancestor had written the Legend of the Piasaw, I was staying on their farm in 2013 in Southern Illinois, and I had a visitor to the cabin I was staying in. Something bipedal, very large, blocked out, the starlight coming in through the window on the porch, but you could hear him walking, and then tried the doorknob, and then walked along the back side of the cabin, which was just full of brush and brambles, and a place that we would not walk.
Right.
But and there was no curtain on the back window, but I'm laying on the bed, and I remember seeing the shadow. It kind of had my eyes kind of closed, but I can remember seeing the shadow cast across the bed, looking in at me for a while, and then it walked off. I could hear it walk off, but so in 2023, I'm visiting the farm again, and I'm in the same cabin, and I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to get a night visitor this time, and I'll be ready to collaborate with them a little bit, maybe. And I get I get to the to the cabin. I sleep all night. Nothing happened overnight. And so I get up, and I'm kind of disappointed, but I'm walking from the cabin along the dirt road back to the main farmhouse, which has been in their family since 1820. And as I'm walking, I look up towards the bluffs, and they're very, they have a lot of trees, and green, and and I stopped in my tracks, and I just looked up at the bluffs, and I thought to myself, I wonder if you're up there watching me. And it wasn't even 3 seconds later, this one single solitary tree that was maybe 3-inch diameter trunk, just a young sapling, just goes shakes on the bluff. And I kind of laughed, and I just did my hand like this, like, oh, come on, and I took about 3 steps, and I turned, and I thought to myself, do it again. And with that, 3 seconds later, that same tree shook again, and I mean, and I know it could be an absolute coincidence, right?
Yeah. But, no, probably not.
Boy, that is unusual, right? So,
yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's interesting.
So my 2 experiences, or actually 4, I guess.
Yeah.
I've seen it. So
I think maybe you have the ability to I know people will call it mind speak to experience that maybe just because you're opened up to it. Like you're not limiting yourself to what you experience when you do go out. So I think that leaves you open to a wider variety of stuff going on. So I find that interesting that it was something that you didn't quite believe in and then you experienced it. So
Right.
now, I mean, you can't not believe in it, right?
Right. But I didn't discount it, right?
Right, exactly.
Prior to that, it was just like people I trust, people I know, I've talked to, and and they've had these experiences, and you know, why don't I try this, right?
Right.
And it worked. So,
That's awesome.
don't limit yourself.
100,000% agree.
Yep.
If that's a number.
Yeah.
So you
But
brought us some, I mean, quite a bit of stuff. I was kind of wondering, there was something about a juvenile.
yes, yeah. So I did a lot of research in when I was doing work in the suburbs of Illinois, and I I did a lot of research, and I went to a lot of forest preserves in and around Chicago area, and I know everybody's like, "Oh, you went to a location? Oh, you had a sighting. Oh, you went to another location, you had a sight." And I'm like, "No, no, no, no. Did you want to hear that I went 45 places and I got skunked?" No, nobody wants to hear that, right? But I did my research, right? I mean, and you'll find it very interesting. I mean, I found structures uh, along near the Des Plaines River, just west of O'Hare Airport. I mean, right there. I
Right.
mean, you're flying over Bigfoot structures there.
Wow.
In the Bussy Woods, um, I had there was multiple structures that I found, including footprints in that area. But it took me a good probably 45 minutes an hour to drive from where I was working after work to get to that location. So I continued moving further out west until I got and it turned out there was woods that was I want to say within a mile and a half of the hotel I was staying at that was that I found structures in, and I was like, wow. I was like, this is amazing, right? So, and I'd been talking to Stan Courtney, who is an Illinois researcher who's done a lot of work, but he had had a sighting of a Sasquatch. I want to say hitchhiking on a train, right? Doing the hobo run, and he'd seen them on the back, riding in between a couple cars, and so I was like, well, if they do that, I'm going to keep my eyes on the railroad tracks, right? So driving up to these woods that was north of the hotel, I kept, I kept my eyes looking down the railroad tracks every time I crossed those, because you could see probably a good half mile down these tracks, straight as an arrow, and uh, and I did that consistently, right? I'm driving, 35 miles an hour is the speed limit. I'm driving maybe 15, 20, so I could make sure I get a
Oh
good
yeah.
view on the track. And and every time I crossed over, I looked both ways, didn't see, you know, didn't see anything, right? But I consistently did that for almost 7 months, right? And then all of a sudden, I'm driving across that track, and here's a Sasquatch crossing that railroad track and going down the hill on the other side. And I was like, I was stunned because just the amount of steps it took. Well, now, of course, I know what the distance is between the rails. I know what the length of railroad tie is and stuff. So I could actually kind of measure the stride, even though he was a distance away from me. And I went over there, and of course, I see these prints, single file prints going down the hill, and it's of course very steep off of the edge of that railroad bed, right? And it's going into an area that what I'll call is no man's land. I mean,
Hmm.
it's kind of swampy, marshy area, um, and so I ended up coming up with this formula, especially for urban areas, that has actually given me great success. But everybody knows, well, you got to have water, you have to have a food source, you have to have shelter, right? And everybody always has that. And then I've added a couple extra, which is a safe place and an area of egress ingress. So
Mm.
and of course this area had a creek that ran north south for miles, so they could actually, transit. I know there's people that talk about them migrating, right, even through Ohio recently, apparently, and the and that really lent itself to tying that, figuring out exactly where they would live, and
Mm-hmm.
especially that safe place area, because there's a it's an area where we would not go ever, right? And but they'll go in there, right? And I found footprints in and out of that safe place area, near the railroad tracks, and um, so then I was like, well, where, if they're coming out of there, where are they going? Why are they going here? So, and then I was like, oh, there's food sources, there's deer and stuff. So I continued to go into those woods that were nearby. And the one day I'm going into those woods doing, my thing, right? Every evening, right?
Mm.
As I always tell my wife, I'm not out at strip clubs, right? I'm on the woods, maybe getting attacked by an 800-pound, um, cryptid, right?
Of course, she's more okay with that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, maybe not, um, but so I head into the woods, and as I'm walking in the one day down this trail that I'd been on every single day, especially since I had found a structure near the end of that same trail, and all of a sudden I start hearing this clatter of brush, just a cacophony of sound that's horizontal, right? It's long, and I thought, oh, that's a deer bounding through this, probably 4 or 5 foot tall underbrush, and so I got my phone out, and I had my, I was going to take a picture of a deer coming out of the, you know, so I'm holding up my phone, and I'm sitting there just waiting to take a picture down. They're going to cross the trail any second, and then it gets completely quiet, and then I start hearing a similar sound of brush and everything moving, but it's vertical, and I'm like, well,
That's
that's weird.
interesting.
And so I start looking up in the treetops. Now, I will caution everybody, when you go out and research, look up. That's a great. So I start looking up, and I'm looking at the treetops, and about 120 feet away from me, I see a little bit of movement at the top of this tree, and then I see this arm reach out, and that is black and hair covered, and reaches out, and it grabs this young shoot off from the tree with a lot of greenery on it, and it takes that small branch and it pulls it into this this nook of the tree, pulls this big greenery into that area. And I'm like, oh my God. I was like,
Wow.
I've treed one, right? There's one in the tree, because I mean, I could literally see as it reached out, you could see the fingers and, everything as it crossed. And so so I hustle down the trail to get down towards that, where that tree is, and I can't like climb the tree, but there's a lot of brush near, and there's a lot of poison oak and poison ivy in that area. But so I stay on the trail, and I start taking photos of it, and I start taking pictures, and I'm looking up there, like, where is it, right? And of course, when I had my camera out for the deer, right, and I
Yeah.
had it turned on, right, I did this, right, as I
Oh,
looked up,
yeah.
and it was only 1 second, so it wasn't like by the time I got my camera up. Plus, you're in deep canopy, so you've got a very it would take a little longer exposure, and I'm not even sure if I had the camera focused on that, if it wouldn't be, the arm wouldn't have been blurry as I
Right. Yeah.
saw that. But so I get to that area, and I'm looking, and I don't see anything up in that tree. I see the greenery up there. I don't see anything up there. And so I walked down the trail a bit. I pretended to take a picture of the meadow, but then I took a picture, I flipped it around, and I took a selfie to think maybe it'll peek out and, try to observe me or whatever. And I didn't see any movement in that. I took a bunch of photos, selfie photos, and I made goofy faces. I did stuff like this, pointing where it is,
Yeah.
stuff like that, and so then I walked back, and took a bunch of photos from the ground. I took photos from looking north from the trail. I took pictures looking west from the trail, and then I decided I'm just going to take a video of that area, and I'll walk clear around the tree as much as I can and take video of that. So, and when I went back later to the hotel, and I couldn't see it. By that time, the sun had completely set, and there was gnats and bugs, and in the video, it's kind of funny. You actually hear me going like, because I'm inhaling swarms of gnats, and but I get back to the hotel later and I start looking at the photos, and then I realize I can see in the photo just the edge of him sitting, of the individual sitting in that nook of the tree, and you can see just the shoulders, the back, and then the way it cuts in for the waist, and then the butt, and it's sitting on that, in that edge. And then when I went back and looked at the photos that I took looking west, you can see a silhouette of a head, and there it is. So you can see that individual's black, just like I had witnessed with the arm. But you can see the back, and then the waist, and the butt right there, just nicely
definitely
hidden.
Not the tree, that's for sure.
That is not the tree.
Yeah.
And then if I looking to the west, here was, I could, you could see this anomaly, right? It may or may not have been it, but it was in the exact area where the back was, right? But you can kind of see an outline of the, and there's, of the, looking west. But that's, I've tried to call out the details there if anybody couldn't see that. I know, and I'm not a huge proponent of the red circle, right? I am.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that circle shadows and leaves, and I'm like, I don't want to dispel your enthusiasm, but I'm not sure about this. But I mean,
I can see what you're saying there, because it's got the indentation like you'd almost see on a gorilla,
right? I mean, or even us, But
right.
if you placed a muscular guy up there,
yeah,
you probably get the same feature. But notice in that photo the texture of the hair, because when it comes around the the face, I only captured on the video when I was looking southwest, and I didn't even, at the time, I didn't notice it, but boy, the hair stood up on my arms when I saw it. Oh, it was looking straight at me. But the hair on the head of the face looks exactly like this hair.
Wow.
As shown. And there it is. That's kind of like the original, unedited clip from the video, and you can see the eye sockets.
Is this what you're seeing here?
That's the eye sockets right there, and the bridge of the nose in between, and then you see the kind of a conical shaped head. Of course, if I bump up the contrast on this, you'll I think, which is in the next image, I bumped it up little by little, and you can start seeing that a little better. But you can see why I couldn't see it well, and I think there might even be another. But the you can tell that the face actually had the skin color, which was actually pretty consistent to I think to my sixth sighting, which I actually was only 120 feet away from one in the daytime and locked eyes with it, and then it took off, and it had dark gray skin and same kind of eye sockets. Then there's probably,
that's interesting.
Yeah, but the texture of that hair is very much the same, and you can see that it's a darker gray skin on the face. But
Hey, did I hear you?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
It's just a lot more better. Yeah, I don't know what was going on with the laptop, so I switched off the laptop onto the cell phone. But I was
much better.
Good, excellent. So I was thinking, and thank you everybody in the chat room for pointing that out as well. So I was like, maybe if I just try this. So I appreciate the chat room. But I was thinking, I mean, with all that you had happen, I mean, pretty amazing pictures too. could you and them understanding, our language? Could you, and in your case, I guess your thoughts too. But could you ask them? I mean, is there any reason why that they would not just come out and let you expose a full picture of them,
Yeah.
brought on or anything like that? I
Well,
mean,
and that's on my list. So, actually, at the end of July this year, I'm actually assisting with the Arizona Bigfoot
Field Researchers Organization expedition. Yes.
UFRO expedition, and so I'll be out there on that, and I'm going to try a couple things. I think when I'm out there as well, but I've always told people I was like, I'm building a relationship with them, so maybe that one day when I actually ask, I want to pay respects to your ancestor, right?
Yeah.
and they'll show me, or anyway, I'm hoping that day comes, right? Where
Right.
that relationship builds, but
In
there's the real
in building your relationship with them, are you familiar with the legendary Robert W. Morgan's work or his book or anything?
I am not.
Oops.
I am
Okay.
not.
The reason why I ask is because one of the things that he did in his field of research is he took the same paths, he wore the same clothing, so they got to be familiar with him. Do you do the same thing, or are you changing your clothing or anything like that?
Oh, my clothing's changed. I'm always, this is Arizona. It's not,
Right.
it's not central Illinois or whatever, but we've got mountain lions out here and bears and stuff. So I'm always armed when I'm in the woods. And especially since one time I actually got stalked by a mountain lion. So, and I always tell people, I'm like, I've probably seen 25 black bears out in the woods of Arizona. And I was like, and I've only had one that didn't run away like its life depended on it. And all it takes is one, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
No, those cougars brought me.
It stood up and challenged me. I'll
Yeah.
put it that way. And I
Those
had to change
cougars
my
want me
shorts.
too. I hear you.
But no, I don't wear the same things. But I'll tell you what, when I go to my consistent research area now, if I start, I'll get out of the car. I don't even I barely get a lawn chair out of the car, and get a lawn chair out, and all of a sudden I'll hear clack clack, or a whistle, or and I just go, hey guys, and they know I'm there, and it's almost like they could be that they knew I was coming, or it could be that they're just in that area, right? And they saw me there, and they went, hey, there he is, but they certainly recognize me. I know that.
Do you wear any kind of a cologne while you're out there? No. Okay.
Just pit juice. That's it.
Okay. All right.
Not even into your deodorant.
Yeah.
All natural.
Yeah. Yep.
Little dirt under the pits.
Yeah. But yeah,
okay.
So
okay.
yeah, no. So and like I said, it just I really like that level of collaboration or interaction that I get from that, and I will hang up audio recorders, and a lot of times 2 a.m. in the morning, it's hanging 12 feet up in the tree, and something will be going tapping on the, tapping on the microphone on the, and it's, but, they don't really bother those, but, I know the Mogollon Rim gets so cold at night, a lot of times, especially when I'm going up there, early on in the season, I've had recorders batteries die, and the one night was totally disappointing because there was a huge argument in the woods, and so it was a lot of talking, a lot of just this.
Oh, wow.
2-3 individuals, and I was like, oh my god, I've got my recorder set up and everything, whatever, but it got down to 17 degrees that night, and my batteries died. So now I wrap the recorders in foam, and I to try to insulate them even better, and inside the waterproof boxes. And anyway, it's but that would have been amazing audio, but I heard it, and yeah. But
You mentioned cold. Do you think that they're more active at a certain temperature in a certain temperature range, or
um,
are you more? And that on top of that, are you having most of your activity happening during the day? I take it. It sounds like
I've had activity in day, in the middle of the
night.
night,
Right.
and and even some of the ones during the day, you know, what I call the sentinel. There's always one that's being a sentinel to watch over the ones that are sleeping during the day. And I was walking into the location, what I thought was a woodpecker, um, after it persistently seemed to be following me into the woods on this hike, and then I kept hearing this clack 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 clack, and I thought, oh, it's a woodpecker, and and then it was very persistent, and then I actually could hear that it was like rock on rock versus it wasn't just tree strikes, and not only that, but it had followed me, right? And then all of us, as I'm hiking down this, I got down to the meadow and I started hiking down the meadow, and all of a sudden there's what I call what like a thunder knock, right? Just daytime, kaboom! This knock occurs behind me in the area where the friendly woodpecker was, and up ahead of me, maybe 300 feet up ahead of me, the brush just erupts in this. It just moves and starts, and you could see brush moving up the hill, and I couldn't see anything, but it was so loud and there was so much movement going up the thing. Now, it could have been a deer or whatever, but when I got up to where that initiated, there was broken limbs that had been put in. There was these bedding areas. Wow. There was 3 bedding areas that were there, and of course, all of those, the greenery that was in there, it was broken off and twisted, and it was not man-made. I'll put it that way.
Right. Yeah.
So
Mitch wants to know if you think that Bigfoot go into another dimension.
It's interesting because I have a good friend who's Navajo. In fact, I talk a lot with the indigenous population of Arizona, and their word for Bigfoot actually roughly translates to like a child of the earth, because their belief is that the Sasquatch can just melt and disappear into the earth at any given time.
Interesting.
And that and not only that, but they also told me, they said, if you've ever looked a Bigfoot in the eyes, or if you've ever seen one and looked in their face, that they'll be able to haunt your dreams. So is that dimensional? And obviously their story, their oral history must be based on something, right? Somebody must have had some experience of that, right? And so like I said before, you can't discount any scientific point like that. So are they dimensional? I certainly have not seen them, disappear into a portal of any kind. Have I seen lights that I can't explain in the woods? I have, at a distance, and I'm just like, there's nobody over in that area. I don't know where that bright light came from, suddenly. And I've also been to Brown Mountain in North Carolina, and I've stood there and I watched multiple lights light up in the woods that I'm just like,
wow,
I can't explain that. Right?
That's amazing.
So,
yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And that kind of leads me into one of the audios that you sent that I found was super, super intriguing. So it was hold on, let me pull it up so I can jog my memory. The infrasound.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'll tell you the story behind that. So in working with MK Davis on the videos that he was working on for the Mike and Sandy Sells site, habituation site in North Texas, and he was like, oh, there's some really good audio in here, or I think I hear some audio in here, but there's too many crickets and frogs or stuff. So he knew that I had done a lot of audio work, and I was like, I'll take a stab at it. So I started going through a lot of the tapes and clips that MK would send me, and as I isolated those things out, there was one clip where there was two individuals that were actually talking back and forth to each other. You could hear, one it was different voices, right?
Yeah.
But they weren't talking English, right? and I'm sitting there and trying to clean up that piece of audio. And the more I worked on it, the sicker I got. And I'm wearing noise canceling headphones, listening to this, and I'm just like, I don't understand why. And I need to walk away. I need to, let me go eat some dinner, and I'll come back to it later. So I come back to it later, and I put the headphones on, and I start going through and looping through and trying to do some cleanup and drop out some of the extraneous noises and stuff. And I start getting sick again. Same feeling, just queasy, like I'm going to throw up or pass out, or I'm not sure, right? And I'm like, you know what? Let me look at the full spectrum of this audio, right? So I start looking at it, and I see down from about 16 hertz up until about 18 hertz, I see this modulation. And I'm like, well, that's inaudible. That's below 20 hertz. That's infrasound.
Right.
And of course I can't hear it. So I just take that and I clip that piece out of the audio. And after that, I have no issue with in working on the rest of the audio. I'm like, well, there's something in that infrasound.
Right.
I can't hear it. So I took it and I actually bumped it up 80 hertz, and I bumped up the decibels because it was, very faint. And that's the audio clip you have is actually that. And you can tell it's very organic. If you can play that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Let's play that now. Wow. I'm going to play it one more time.
Yeah.
Wow.
Almost like a vibrato at the end. And the funny part is I sent the non-enhanced clip to the other researchers, MK and the other researchers on our team, including Steve Summer and others, and they all actually got physically ill as well listening to the thing. So I actually have that clip labeled toxic in my thing, because it doesn't hurt us to listen to what you just played, but certainly it definitely has an effect on us with that infrasound. And of course, this is, like I said, on audio where there's two Sasquatch individuals talking to each other, that you can hear them. And, so I obviously can't explain it, but when those other researchers did play those, they said their dogs went absolutely nuts.
Wow.
When it was being played. So
wow, I think
which was interesting because it was inaudible, right?
Right. Yeah, which is what infrasound is, but I think it's so interesting that you were able to notice what somebody captured as far as infrasound. I think this is the first time I've ever heard of anybody pointing out what could be captured infrasound.
Right, and I think the base of that was at 16, because I think that was probably the limitation of the microphones on the recorders that they had.
Yeah. So yeah, but it was doing its job because you were feeling the effects of it.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, and you can hear even in that, like I said, it's almost like a vibrato. You can tell it's a very organic thing, And I've been hit by infrasound a couple times in the woods, and one of them actually took me to my knees, and that was out on Long Island. Yeah, Pops.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've had it happen 4 times.
Yep.
This time.
Yep. And the funniest part was that was probably the first time I'd actually said anything in English to them, but when I dropped to my knee, and this was, like I said, on Long Island, and I I couldn't even catch my breath. I thought this was it. I'm done, right? And I fell to my knees, and as I'm got one hand on the ground, I just kind of lifted my head and I just said in English, "I'm a friend."
Wow.
And when that happened, it felt like a pile of bricks had just been lifted off of me. It was, and after that, that was my first experience with infrasound in the woods. And I'm telling you what, I went for a beer after that.
Yeah,
I
it's
was
beer
like,
time.
I was like,
It's beer
whoa,
o'clock.
yeah. Maybe I need to re-examine my choices in life, right?
Yeah, just for a couple days, and then you're back
Yeah.
at it again. I'm sure.
Then I was back at it again.
Exactly.
Infrasound is no fun.
No,
Believe
no,
me. It felt like
it's
I was
definitely
having
a
a heart
real thing.
attack.
Yep.
Got out of
Yeah.
the woods, came back, and then I was having anxiety attacks.
Hmm.
Yep.
Prior
Wow.
to that morning out there, they were throwing branches and rocks at in the dark. It
Wow.
was
Yeah,
very creepy.
yeah, that Long Island experience was my own fault because I had a thermal and I really wanted to capture something, and here I am hiking back out of these woods where I had had multiple encounters, but I never did get a sighting on Long Island, but I did a long time gifting exchange there. But I'm hiking back out of there, and what I hear, it sounds like somebody jogging down one of the hiking trails, and I'm almost to the car, and I hear somebody, it sounds like jogging down the trail, but it's pitch black darkness, and I can't see any headlamp or anything like that. And so I turn on the thermal, and I'm like, this has to be a Sasquatch, right? And suddenly as it got closer, it realized I was there, and it dove into this brush. So I actually saw a little bit of heat signatures through all the brush,
Yeah.
and then I continually tried to angle myself so I could see it in that deep brush, and finally it took off from there and went behind this other clump of brush,
Hmm.
and you could see a little bit of a heat signature. It was standing there behind this thing, and I'm trying to once again get an angle so I could get a good thermal on it, and then suddenly I'm like down to my knees, and
Yeah. Don't
so
record me.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That surprised me, but it was really funny when this was when Pokemon Go was a big thing, and I was hiking back out from the woods, those woods on Long Island late at night, and all of a sudden I see something bipedal up ahead off in the brush. So I'm like, I rush ahead and I get there and I'm looking, and and it was dark enough that I couldn't see my way out of there. So I had the thermal on already, and I see and I go, I can see a belt line on that thermal image. I'm like, that's a person, and then I realize, oh, he's holding up a phone and walking around in the woods, and then he comes walking back out towards the trail, and I'm standing there, and I surprised him because I was in the total darkness, right? And I said,
6'5" and in the dark.
I said, what the hell were you doing out here? And he goes, oh, whatever, I caught a snuggle puff or whatever the hell, I was like, you're, you're insane.
It's crazy. So you know how people say, that there's nobody walking around in the dark that's 6 feet tall. I can just say, yeah, Karl.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. No, I've got a couple thermals, and but like I said, I don't do a lot of stuff like that, but I've done my share, especially when I'm on the road working. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's wild. I did want to, there's a couple more in this same file. It is a couple audios of Bigfoot. You have the Arizona double cabin
double
howl, and then
cabin
you
howl.
have the Carl Howl long.
So double cabin howl was recorded by another researcher, Jeff Johnson, who's actually going to be helping out on that Bigfoot, the BFRO expedition in Arizona. But he was sleeping in, he was sleeping in his camper or his tent, and he gets woken up by a Bigfoot howling, and the Bigfoot howls a second time, and then coyotes join in, and over the and join into with the Bigfoot howl, but you can still hear a third howl where the Bigfoot is beneath, its audio is beneath the coyote howl, which is interesting. So you can play that. It's an interesting clip. And between the first howl and the second howl, he ends up waking up and shuffling around in his tent, So I think he wakes up right there. Yeah. Oh, maybe there was 4 howls. Yeah, so there's 4 howls in that.
So wait, sorry, I didn't mean to play it. Yeah. So is that? Did you say there's coyote howls in that? Is that towards the end?
Right at the end. Right at the end.
It's like it stirred them up. It's like they're responding in some way.
Oh, there was. I've gone out in the woods and howled, and they've. I've woken up just a huge pack of coyotes, and I'm just like, oh my god! I was like, and they went on for hours after that. It was funny, but
yeah, there's been times where I swear, like you could hear what sounds like a Bigfoot howl that's almost like undershadowed or shadowed by coyote yips. It's like sometimes it's masked in there, and it's just, I find it very interesting. But yeah, it sounds like you scared the coyotes doing your house.
There's almost like a coexistence between the Bigfoot and the coyote.
Mm-hmm.
I think there is absolutely true.
Karl, can we hear your howl?
Oh sure,
yes.
There's an audio clip of my howl.
Okay,
if you want to, you can play that if you want.
Can you do your howl live, or is it too late?
I can absolutely do it live.
Let's do it live, man.
Yeah, all right, live. All right. Whoa!
I can imagine if we were in the woods, that would have carried forever.
Oh, it's really funny.
It does. Actually, you should have heard them.
Yeah, there was really funny. There was actually one researcher that was camped in a different location near us, but was 2 miles away, and they came on the radio and they asked me to do a howl, and they could hear me absolutely clearly 2 miles away.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool.
Yeah,
that's what you want. You want it to carry.
Yep. Oh yeah. No,
that's
and
awesome.
In fact, by the end of a BFRO trip, typically I'm hoarse. I can't speak at all. But but yeah, and it's funny. I did actually I have a recording once that I made of it's probably a good 25-second howl that I did, so I recorded it, and then I play that back like on my call blaster. But and I don't use the call blaster very often. If I want to do it, I do it organically. Mm-hmm. But the one time I actually was using my call blaster, I actually had recordings on my digital recorder of blue whales and minke whales, and I played those out in the woods, and it was blue whales calling for, and it was so eerie. If you want to hear blue whales in the woods, it's very eerie to hear it. But here's the funny part was that I played the first round, and it's like, I want to say 5 minutes of blue whale song. And then I left like a good, probably 5-minute quiet area. And then I repeated the blue whale thing again, and then another 5 minutes of quiet, right? And the first one went, and then during the quiet part, I could hear something along the ridgeline above us tromping through the brush. And then it got quiet up there. And then the blue whale song part repeated again. And then when it finished, in the next quiet part, a blue whale called back to us from the top of that ridge. Mimicked it perfectly. I'm telling you, I was just like shocked, and but of course that was a hint from other researchers, right? So you need to pull in all your data points from everyone else. But it'll surprise you.
Wow. That's amazing. You had brought over so much audio that's just so amazing. Um, and I don't know if we'll be able to cover all of it, but at least want to show the Mountains of Arizona baby prints.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I'd love to show those. So we'll just open them up and you can
Yep.
just kind of tell us about them.
Sure. So this was 2010, and researchers had gone up right when they. So the research area I go into is closed during the wintertime. So in fact, I think they might be opening it up this weekend, I think, but the roads are all closed going in there because they don't want. There's always rain, snow melt, and so forth. They don't want people tearing up the roads. Well, the researchers went in there on opening day, right? So they were out there on the very first day, and they hiked down into this canyon. They drove their quads back in there. There was no tracks whatsoever going into that canyon, and they discovered, I want to say, 45 prints all over the bottom in snow melt water. In fact, snow was still on the ground in the shadows of the canyons. But in snow melt water down in these creek beds, and they found these 45 prints. It was crazy, and they had enough material, and then they cast 3 prints, and then they called me up, and they wanted me to go up there and do that. So Wednesday, that was I think on a Monday, I think they opened it up on that Wednesday. So 2 days later, I suddenly got sick at work. And I headed up towards that area, and these were 7-inch prints, and they were just all over in this muddy water and on the banks of this creek, and the sad part about this was that the photos of these were sent to Dr. Meldrum, and Dr. Meldrum looked at these and he said, "Oh, they're children's prints." Well, there was no. I mean, this was probably 2-3 miles away from anybody's. Anybody who even would have driven in there, much less had their kid run around barefoot in 40-degree weather in water that was probably 34 degrees. And
right.
So and sadly, these casts that were made were because they were told that they were human prints. They ended up tossing them, but so I only have the photos of those, unless at least they think they tossed them because they move when they moved. But I'm hoping that sometime we'll be able to. Maybe they'll have them tucked in a box someplace. But
man.
But they're spectacular because even on that one, and you could see the toes actually slid down in a deep print. I mean, it was incredibly deep, and slid down and then curled at the end in order to capture that. But when I went to the site, there was a lot of and I don't know if they had seen them casting those prints, but I went to the site and there was those prints were mutilated. It was and I don't know if there was maybe more snow melt or what, but a lot of those were just washed out and really not castable. But
right.
I'm at least thankful that they cast these 3 prints. So.
Yeah, and I like. Was it you that casted these?
No. My the other researcher did.
Yeah, they did a great job. I like how they put that mesh in there to add that strength to the cast.
Yep.
Because it's very important that you add some sort of strength within the casting material as you're doing it to keep it from breaking.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I have poundage of UltraCal at my house.
Yeah. So, what do you use? Yeah, what do you prefer as far as casting material?
Yeah, I really like UltraCal 30 because it really cures very fast. Mm-hmm. So that's what the 30 is.
Yeah.
30 minute. although a lot of times, especially when it's cold, it takes a little longer. Um, but yeah, I've done that, and I've done some casting classes up there. And I have this one print that used it used the upper part of the print was a broken cast from uh, that was original. I took it and made an imprint of it for the casting class, but it was from Colorado, from a stream bed in the sand in
Hmm.
Colorado. So it's very, very detailed. And then since that cast had been broken at the back end, I took a copy of the Bossberg print and place that in the sand in order to for the casting class. So I love that example I have because I know it's, and I wrote all on the back. I'm not trying to fake anybody out, but
Right.
I you know I hold and I put some details in it that it's like, oh yeah, this is you know not original, right?
Right.
But
Yeah.
I mean I do have some original. These came off of the Mike and Sandy Sells site. Um, you can see
Wow.
you can, it's an original cast that Mike Sells made, but and once again the same thing, right? Those toes
Hmm.
dug in and they're splayed, right, as it went
The
through that mud.
balance. Yeah.
So yeah, and I've got a couple others here as well, but I do think that I do think that some of them have a little more of an arch, especially when they're younger, just like you saw in those baby prints, right? I mean, this is a smaller print, and you can see the toe drags there, but it's a small print, and you can see that there was, whether or not there was maybe a log or a stick or something that was maybe in the way, but it
Yeah. Wow.
certainly had more of a bend across something in the middle of that. So
That's interesting. Can I see that again?
yeah, absolutely.
Oh, wow. That's
So
interesting.
and you'll probably see a lot of these casts and a lot of this audio in a documentary that's coming out this year, of which I am the narrator,
Nice.
and it's called The Sometime Place. So Chris Reinhardt is producing it, and a lot of the original researchers that were on the Mike and Sandy Cell site, um, and believe it or not, I'll make a teaser here, but they actually corresponded with Sasquatch on their property. So there was journaling that occurred back and forth between them, and I think that'll probably stretch people's minds. I'll put it that way.
Wow. That's going to be awesome. You have a great voice for narration, so that'll be very nice. You have been such a wonderful guest. I don't want to cut you off, Abe, if and Pops, if you had any more questions or anything.
Pops just wanted to show you guys his wolf.
Yeah, that's what I was just looking at. That bear print.
It's a
Oh,
wolf.
Oh, it's a wolf print. Okay,
It's a
I
big
see it
wolf.
now.
Big dog. So, Carl, you were talking about knocks. Do
Yes.
you think that's something that they produce with their body, or do you think that they're actually using a tool to produce it?
I think they do both.
Okay.
I think they're opportunistic when they want to try to respond, and I think that I've heard some knocks that are questionable, but I've also had audio recorders hung up remotely where you could hear a very faint knock in the distance, and then all of a sudden there was one that had been sitting near the mic, because it sounded like something walked up, but then there was no more brush movement on the audio, and then it was maybe I would say 2-3 in the morning, whatever it was had been sitting right near the recorder, and then got up, and you could hear it walk a distance away bipedally, and all of a sudden you it just hits, it strikes something in order to respond to that knock that you could hear in the distance.
Right.
When I went back there and I heard that on the audio, I went back to that location, and sure enough, maybe about 150 feet away from where that recorder was, there was a big flat rock there, and on it was a freshly broken big stick, big limb that had been broken on that rock. So
Wow.
whether or not it sticks on rocks or sticks on trees or them making some kind of a pop sound or
Right.
I think that they probably do it all. So
I had a question earlier when we were talking about diurnal or nocturnal activity and also temperature. But I think we got
yes.
more on the diurnal and nocturnal part. Do you think that there's a better temperature range for research?
And that's funny. So I will tell you, there is a desert research area that I
Yeah.
have,
Okay.
and they are out there all summer long in southern Arizona, along the Lower Salt River, and I have had numerous reports from this area of guys trying to fish on the river, at night and getting rocks thrown at them and sticks and even to the point where rocks that were big enough that it actually cavitated the water and they could hear the rock hit the bedrock
Huh.
below, and the river's
Huh.
fairly deep in that area. So
Right.
that
Well,
was
that's
pretty
some
big
big
rock.
rocks
But
then.
Sounds like Power Lake.
yeah, and and the one guy actually scarily relayed the story. He said that he had had enough of it, and he stood up and he said, you need to cut that out, or I'm gonna open fire on you. And because he's thinking it's somebody screwing with him, and another rock comes flying out from the
Bring
other
it
side of the
on,
river,
sucker.
and he pulled out his gun and he unloaded his clip into those
Wow.
woods at night, right? I mean, that scares the heck out of me, but there's a lot of yahoos in the woods, right?
Yeah.
And he said, and about 10 minutes passed by, and then another rock came flying out.
Since we've had you on, since I've known you, I've and listening to your stories of when it comes to communications with this being, creature, whatever you want to call it, is that I've noticed, and plus in my research as well, is that you'll say that you hear a couple clacks or you hear a couple knocks. When you mean a couple, are you usually saying two? Is what you're
There's
doing?
two. Yeah,
Yeah.
but like I said, with my friend, they interacted, and it was just like,
Okay.
you know, you know, and, and it was different, not the samba beat, but certainly syncopated at times, and but they were definitely responding back. And I've heard 2-3 clacks, and like I said, the one was like sounded like a woodpecker, right? So it was probably like 20,
Repetitive.
like 10, 20 clacks in a row, until I realized after the big thunder knock that it was not
Not a
not a
woodpecker.
woodpecker.
And I guess why I asked that, because I as part of my research, is that possible what knocks mean, what different numbers of responses or replies mean, and I'm seeing a lot of two, like
Yeah, they do a lot of ones and twos.
ones and twos, and I'm thinking that the twos are like, okay, it's cool, come close, it's like in confirmation or something, that versus a one knock could be, but we really don't know. But I'm seeing that it's more like a warning or a signal knock to the
Yeah,
rest.
yeah, and I've heard like the 3-4 knocks. I've heard those, and it's almost like warning, humans coming in here.
Yeah, watch out,
I
Will Robbins. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Danger,
Two knocks,
humans.
so that's more of a warning. Two
Yeah.
knocks is
Oh,
more of a warning.
and that's a funny story, because in 1982 I actually had the opportunity to buy the original Robbie the Robot, and I but it was $1,500, and I did not have that at that time. So, but
I had a
yeah.
Robbie Jr.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
from Radio Shack.
yeah.
Yeah, all dang. Let me see.
Mitch
Go ahead.
had a
Yeah.
question. He wants to know, Karl, if you think Bigfoot can be in the densest of cities and come into their homes.
Well, I know that it tried to get into the cabin that I was at, but that's a very rural area of southern Illinois. And I know absolutely, like I said, I found them out on Long Island, and finding them on Long Island was difficult because, I wanted to get in the woods. There was woods in Long Island, and I was like, oh, but they're not out here. Right. And, but the more recent, I found a report from 1899 at Rockaway Beach, and I was like, I'm just not going to be able to find them here. And then I thought, let me go to the paranormal websites. So I went to the ghost hunting websites on Long Island, and there was stories of, oh, there was the mother of this child that died in 1710, and she haunts these woods and howls at night, and sometimes you can see red eyes, and and then we went there looking for her, and rocks appeared from thin air and were hurled our way, and and so forth. And I'm like, wait a minute, I know this behavior, right? So I isolated it down to those woods, and the more research I did in that area, and then I started gifting apples, and they'd be gone, and of course it could have been a squirrel or a raccoon or who knows, right? But then when they started leaving gifts where the apples had been, little polished rocks, quartz rocks, fossils, feathers, then I knew what I had, right? And
Very interesting.
but it was interesting. They were in a highly urban area, and really only in about 1,100 acres is where they were living. Although, and it stretched, and that was intersected by the Northern State Parkway, 25, running across Long Island, and but they were transiting not above on the highway, but they were transiting through the the I know Doug Haycheck caught me on this, but I was calling them viaducts, but they were the conduits, the drainage pipes that went underneath the highways, and they were using that, and those actually had grates on those to keep people out of those tunnels. And boy, I'll tell you what, the strength that mangled those grates that I saw was, when they just basically were like, nope, we're using this, and
wow, that's brilliant. That's brilliant that you pieced that together.
Yep. And then they were using that piece of woods, and of course there was a creek that ran north from there up to the Long Island Sound. So and I understand they're very good swimmers. And I think that they were transiting from Connecticut and Rhode Island, which I also went up and researched in as well. So,
wow.
And I got responses. I heard howls and calls back. So that's
brilliant. Very interesting. Very interesting. So where did you say that you were going to be doing, for who was you going to be doing the audio? The voiceovers?
The audio for the where that audio is going to be. It's Chris Reinhardt will be releasing it, and it's going to be called The Sometime Place. And we know it's called The Sometime Place because that's actually where the Bigfoot wrote in those journals on where they went when they were not at the farm, at the Sells farm. They went to the Sometime Place.
Oh, that's interesting. Dimensional. Yeah.
Yes.
That's interesting. That's interesting. So people can find most of what you do, even if it's Bigfoot, on your website, ghosthuntingtheories.com.
Absolutely. You just search my name and you'll find stuff out there. And it's interesting in the biography you read there. So there was a friend of mine who actually runs ghosthuntingtheories.com. She does psychometry, so she can touch an object and tell you about the person, right, and tell you about those items. And when I had my sixth sighting, I actually, and I went back and I documented the footprints and where it was and so forth. Nearby was an out of place. There was just a deer skull that was right nearby, and I thought to myself, I don't know whether I was, intuition told me that the Bigfoot had probably carried it over there. So I dug around in my bag, and I had a plastic bag that was big enough so I wouldn't touch it. And I bagged that deer skull, and I took it to her, and if you go out on ghosthuntingtheories.com, it's an amazing account of her reading of actually looking and seeing through a Bigfoot's vision and what they felt when she touched that deer skull.
That's interesting.
Like I said, keep an open mind, right? Anything can happen. So
yes. Quinlan, I don't know how much time. Are you pressed for time or anything?
No, I'm not.
You're talking to
But,
me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. No, I'm okay. I just my dogs are starting to move around a little bit, so I know they got to go out to the bathroom.
Oh, I'm so happy your dog's doing so much better. But before
Thank
we
you.
let Carl go, one thing that really kind of sticks out is the Bigfoot blood sample that he collected.
Oh,
I
thank
didn't
you for
even get
bringing
to
that
that.
up. Thank you for bringing that up.
I didn't even.
Cannot let him go without talking about that.
Yeah, I know. And so, so up on the Mogollon Rim in Arizona, so one day I had my kids with me, my son and daughter, and I wanted to show them a nest that I had found, um, and uh, and this nest was interesting. It had been there was a fallen tree, and then this other large tree had been brought over to kind of make a cross like this, but on the ground, and then a young Douglas fir had been pushed over, and the top of that Douglas fir had been ripped off and taken and stuffed into as bedding inside that area. So I was showing them where and it had been deteriorated a bit since I had found it about a month and a half earlier, but they but the Douglas fir was still alive. They just pushed it over, but not to the point of uprooting it, right? And and of course the strength just to rip off probably a 2.5, 3 inch diameter piece of trunk off the crown of a Douglas fir, and it was not cut. It had been just snapped off, and the um, and then my daughter noticed a footprint that was not far away in the forest litter, and it was a deep impression. So I started tracking. So we started tracking it, and it went down the hill, up this side canyon, up to another canyon, hung a left, and we continued following. And sometimes you couldn't see it, right? But I was just measuring what the stride was, which was 65 inches, measuring that out, and then seeing details where it's like, oh yeah, this has been pressed down here, even though it wasn't obvious. And I tracked that a quarter mile, right? And when the prints were nice and deep and you could actually kind of see those prints, I took photos of them, and put tape measure out, and to show that. And and it was a typical Sasquatch, trackway, right? It was not staggered like this. It was pretty much in line. But the 65 inches was pretty consistent, even as that trackway went up this incline towards an overlook from the lake. Now, from this overlook, you could see all human activity going on from a completely concealed position. Um, but we get up to the top of that, and here is this there's a little rock ledge there, and on that rock ledge, there's two or three small ponderosa pines saplings that had been growing there, and there's grasses that were on that rock ledge. Well, something had sat down there, whose butt was about 3 feet wide, right? It calls me back to the song, right? I like big butts, right? But the you know that butt print was the small trees were just starting to rebound from where they'd been pressed down and sat on, right? A human would not just sit down on a tree sapling, right? It's not very comfortable. And the grasses were just starting to rebound a little bit, right? And as I'm documenting this butt print, my daughter says, "Dad, is this blood?" And I look down and I see these red droplets of blood spattered all over the ground, on rocks, on pine needles, on leaves, etc. And so I take a pine needle and I just kind of poked it, to see, and it was just starting to coagulate. That's how fresh it was. Well, by this time in my research effort, had already been carrying a forensic kit, and I'm like, put on gloves. Everybody. So we put on gloves, and I got a bunch of Ziploc bags out, and I collected up every ounce of that blood that was on the ground, including on rocks, right? Um, we packed all those out. Later on, when I went back and looked at the photos of the footprints, you could see in the left foot impressions in that trackway a dark spot kind of in the center of the print. And I think it had cut its left foot. It had gotten up to the top, and just like any of us, right, sat down. I'm going to look at this cut, and then it hears us coming, and it took off, right? But as it moved its foot, as it was trying to look at it, the blood was dripping out of its foot, just like it was along the trackway. Now, unfortunately, I didn't know about the trackway thing until I got home later and started looking closer at the photos. But it certainly is very well documented. A trackway all the way from a nest that was not human built, all the way, to an area and I'm like, that's pretty well documented. But that blood currently getting tested, and it's going to be tested for not only full genome, but also full traits, which is going to be an interesting thing as well. And when those results come back, I should be filming an episode for Sasquatch Legend Meets Science 2.
That is fascinating.
Yeah. So he's going to be on it as well. Oh my gosh.
That is awesome. So do you have a time frame potentially?
I was just going to ask that.
Yeah.
I don't. I have not gotten a response back on a set time frame, although I just know that the lab is very busy. So
yes.
We were supposed to have heard something by the time of the last Minnesota Bigfoot conference, in hopes of him being able to share something then.
Right.
But like he said, it's so busy. The lab is so busy, and it takes a while to do a thorough job. You don't want to rush science. You can't rush the proper science.
And the best part is that, I actually did not send all the samples I have.
I was going to ask
into
that,
the single lab, because we want to send those to multiple labs and get them tested independently of each other in order to actually provide good science on it.
Awesome.
Absolutely. You talked about nests. And
yes,
have you documented picture or anything like this of these different nests that you came across?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, cool.
A lot of them are stick structures. I've had them woven. The most interesting one I ever found was along the Salt River in Arizona, and there's a lot of non-native bamboo that grows, almost like rushes, if you would, along the banks of the river, and they had taken this bamboo and woven it, I want to say almost like a basket. It was tubular, and it was this very long tube that went back in about almost 8 feet long, and it went back into this deep brush where they could easily duck into that, and somebody could walk along that trail, a fisherman or hiker or something like that, and they'd never see him in there. And
oh wow.
But I was going to climb in there, but there was, there were some cobwebs towards the end, and I was like, I don't know about that. But
yeah, it's hard for me to walk through cobwebs myself. Yeah. So
I mean, I've had tarantulas crawl on me, but that's about my limit. So
no, my gosh.
I thoroughly enjoyed having him on. Wasn't he just awesome?
Yes, Karl, you are amazing, and I cannot wait to find out what they find with that blood sample.
Absolutely.
I mean, definitely stay in touch, and we'd love to have you back on. We didn't even get to. I feel like we didn't even,
we're not
barely
even
crack the surface.
Yeah, exactly.
The stuff that you have to talk about, and the audio we didn't get to even go over. I mean, I'd love to have you back on again sometime.
Sure, I'd love it. But
yes,
absolutely.
You're wonderful. I love your mind. You're brilliant man. So definitely everyone go check out ghosthuntingtheories.com. Go see everything that he's up to, and definitely go watch that one video you were telling us about. I think I'm going to go check that out as soon as we're done.
Yeah.
But
absolutely.
Yeah.
But it was a pleasure being at the Minnesota Bigfoot conference last year and speaking.
Oh, we had a blast, buddy. We had a blast.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I brought, and I didn't even talk about that, but I brought there was a flute that I had found, and I actually brought that to the conference and let everybody take a look at that. But
man,
it was and that came out of the Illinois woods as well. So
yeah, I have those pictures. So whenever you come back on, I have your file set up already. So we'll just add to it, and we'll cover the stuff we didn't get to cover this time.
I look forward to it.
Thanks, Karl. It's great having you.
Talk to you soon. Everybody. Stay in touch, buddy. Yep.
Love you guys.
Yep. You too, bud. Take it easy.
All right.
Yeah.